Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Hi, I'm Felicia. I'm an alcoholic. And I'm going to be taking a cake, I guess, after this. I turned 4 yesterday. So I'm on fire. It's really cool. Well, I'd taken a cake earlier today, and let me, before I forget, thank you, Kelly, for asking me to come out and share. I took a cake, what I was going to say is I took a cake earlier today, and I just was realizing how much I have melted, and hopefully will continue to melt. Things are a lot different this birthday. You know, this last year has really been about just really feeling things, you know, becoming awake and becoming aware of behaviors that were not serving me anymore, and having to cut those out of my life. You know, before I got sober, I started drinking at 16. I started having those alcoholic thoughts at 5, though, you know, at 5. And just kind of metastasized, is that the right word? And by 14 and 15 and 16, I was just off and running. And it was terrible, boy, the loneliness that I had at like 5 and 6 and 7. My mom actually had consulted a pediatrician because she was wondering, like, is this normal? I would just go around all the time, Mommy, I'm sad, all the time. So she consulted this pediatrician, and he said, you know, she'll probably grow out of it. Yeah. Hi, well, I'm here at Malibu Saturday Night AA, so. But could be worse, though, huh? This is actually a great deal. So, anyway, so my first drunk, like I said, was at 16, and it was with someone who was my then boyfriend, who, my dad's a musician, and this guy was in my father's band, who was, and he was 20 years older than me, so this is always really healthy, and you know, and I just was, you know, looking for Dad probably, and, you know, I was nuts. I was just totally nuts and hurting and in a lot of pain. And I remember we went out and we got this Stoli vodka, and I just was drinking it like it was water. And, you know, I got really sick, the whole deal that you hear about. And that's how it was. And, but I remember I could breathe. I remember feeling so free from all of that fear, because I was so freaked out as a kid. I played piano growing up. I started at like 5, 6 years old playing piano, and, you know, I was so terrified. I was in fear over that. Like, I always had to be the best. I was never good enough, you know. So all of those thoughts, you know, I mean, the second I've had that, you know, the feeling I was coming out of the alcohol, I was like, and I could breathe, and it was great, and it worked for a long while, you know, it really did. And I got into some other things too during that time, from like 16 to 20, when I was in that relationship that turned pretty abusive, actually. I got into pills, and what time am I at here? Got into pills and stuff, and just basically my life consisted of, you know, sitting around in my room and laying on the floor, nodding out, which is a really productive life, and drooling on myself and journaling about my pain, and, you know, how no one knows about my pain, and then calling people up and telling them about my pain, and that was just life. And eventually I got out of that relationship by thank God I did. It was pretty intense. And I thought, everything will be fine now. I'm free. I'm out of jail. And it wasn't, because I'm an alcoholic. It wasn't the relationship. I mean, granted, that wasn't great, but that wasn't the problem. And so I took a job at waiting tables where there's tons of drugs. Who knew? In the restaurant business, there's tons of drugs and booze. Everyone's partying. What are you going to do after? I don't know. What are you going to do after? Let's go to the club. So we would just go to the clubs and just party. And, I'd be on the lawn and peed my pants at 5 in the morning and the dew's on me. I'm like, how the hell did this happen? And that happened all the time. I mean, my parents were reminding me of that like a couple days ago. They were like, and I'm like, why didn't you do anything? Why didn't you stop me? Like, what could we do? They were just really, there was nothing that they could do. And they thought maybe, and they didn't want to kick me out, because they were scared of what would happen if I was out there on my own. So, it went that way, and then eventually I was drinking alone in the room. There was a series of more abuse. There was another abusive relationship, rather, and it would get like more, I was getting more mean when I would drink. And yeah, I was really lucky, though. I didn't get the DUIs and stuff. I didn't get thrown in the can. These are all my yets, though. I realized that, I realized that. I do H&I, and I go into East LA County Hospital. I get to see, like, what could happen to me if I go back out there. It's not like, oh, well, I didn't do that, and that'll never be me. That's waiting for me, and I realized that. But so my bottom, like really just fast forwarding, is just, I just spiraled down into just this abyss of like more loneliness, and it really stopped working, but I couldn't stop drinking. But the freedom from the fear, the fear was coming back up. It was like clutching at my throat. It was just terrible. And all the family issues, all that stuff, that was all like right there at me and gnawing at me. So nothing, it was just, the anesthetic was no longer working. And by this point, I'm like 24, and this shrink that I'm seeing, and I had been in therapy for years, he says, you need to go to AA. And I'm like appalled. I'm like, look, I don't have a shopping cart, okay? And that's really, I know that probably sounds like snobby, but that's just where I was at. And so I was really scared, though, nonetheless. I knew, like, he was on to something. I mean, hello, my life is, like, falling apart. So I called somebody up that was in my dad's band, who was sober for quite a while, and he led me to Radford Hall in Sherman Oaks. And so I went to the Friday night meeting there, and I remember, I didn't identify or anything, and then the prayer was said, and it's like, Our Father who art in heaven. I'm like, oh my God. It like freaked me out. It was like some cult, and but I remember I came back, and I couldn't stay sober, though. It was really hard for me to stay sober. And eventually I did get 3 months, but I was totally doing it like self-will and white-knuckling it. And it was probably one of the most miserable times of my life. It was from June 7th to like September 1st of '99. And I was just bouncing off the walls. And then September 1st, I think, yeah, that was when I decided to go back out there. And I thought everything was like basically intact and everything. Well, lost all the piano. I started losing things now, but that doesn't matter. I remember looking in the mirror and I did not know who I was anymore. My eyes were black, and it was just terrible. It was terrible. And I mean, once again, I have to say this. And I've heard a lot of people say this at meetings, and it's important to say. I mean, I could not stop drinking, but it didn't seem like there was an alternative, though. I mean, I had to do it nonetheless. Even though my throat would be burning, it was like, it's got to be done. And so I basically just figured, well, yeah, I'm just surrendering to this. Whatever happens, happens. I really didn't want to be alive anymore. And 2 months later, I ended up in rehab. That was after I had aspirated in my mouth. My mom found me, thank God, because I wouldn't be here. And they just said, no more of this, you're out of here. And so my parents were angels. You know, they finally just went, you're out of here. And I knew, I mean, I had like nothing, no friends left or anything. So I decided to pull one last stunt and go, well, I'll go in somewhere and I'll get physically well, because I was really physically I was getting sick. And so I thought, I'll go in for 30 days, you know, 30-day wonder thing, and then I'll be fine, and I'll somehow weasel an apartment out of them, and then I'll just do it on my own, you know, because I really didn't want to hurt them anymore, but I couldn't stop once again. So, but here's the thing, my whole plan gets ruined by you guys, because I go into cry help and I have this, you know, phenomenal like movie moment, and it was from a movie, that movie Shawshank Redemption, where Morgan Freeman says that thing, get busy living or get busy dying. And I have this moment, I remember that line, because that's like one of my favorite movies. It's always been so inspiring, and I remember that. I'm like smoking, I was still a smoker then. I quit that this year too and lost my mind. But so I was smoking on the patio of Cry Help, and I remembered that, and I just went, you know, you've just been dying. You've been killing yourself your entire life. Knock it off. You know, knock it off. Just do what they say. And I just did everything they said, and that's what I've been doing for 4 years. My sponsor's here, so maybe I shouldn't say everything. But I've been pretty good, you know. I've really tried to be rigorously honest, and I've tried to be humble. You know, it's a day at a time. It's a day at a time process, and I love working with newcomers. I love the process of growing and learning. Even, it's exciting, even when it's painful. This year there's been a lot of pain because, you know, like I said at the beginning of this, I decided to take some things away and just kind of make it a little bit more real. And but because I did that, the beauty part is that I am, and doing esteemable acts, getting self-esteem, that whole thing that they keep saying and pushing around here, it is so true. Being of service, I have been so immersed with being of service that I have a little flame today, and this just kills me that I'm enough. And it's just like, I mean, you guys have taught me that. You guys have like loved me till I could love myself, and it's just a little flame. And let's just hope we can like fan it and let it become a forest fire. And you know, no, you know what? It's a flame, and that's enough. It's there, and you know, I did not. I mean, that's the thing. At 5 years old, I didn't have that. You know, I did not have that, and you know, I thought I did even like a couple years ago and last year. Like, yeah, no, I love myself, and I think, yeah, I loved myself so as much as I could, but there's something that changed where I'm just like, am I comfortable? I'm starting to feel like a little comfortable. This is wild. And am I serene? Whoa. That's a little, so it's just the gifts around here. It's so much bigger than alcohol, you know, so much bigger than alcohol. And the gifts are just amazing, but you know, you do have to be willing to do the work, and sometimes that is not always fun, but it is totally necessary and worth it, like I said. And I think that's probably enough out of me. So thank you for listening and paying a 12-step call on me. God bless you guys.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think. Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.